Okay, good morning, good afternoon, depending on the part of the world that you're living in. This is Lidatu Taddasa, your instructor for the course Python Essentials. Um, so we'd be proceeding with the first section of the Python programming course. So we'll start off with keywords and identifiers and then follow on to statements and comments and also discuss about Python variables, type conversion, and so forth. So uh, always keep in mind that we for programming to master programming, it's very vital for you to always learn by doing. So when you start to code, then that's how you start to crystallize the knowledge that you want to grasp. So it's very crucial that you do that. At the end of each section, actually, we do also have exercises. Okay. Keywords are special reserved words in Python or any other programming language, which you cannot use them for identifiers. Identifiers are um, a name that represents a variable. For example, my name is Lidatu, and that represents the person that you're seeing right now. So, likewise, for any of the variables that you're defining in your Python code, the identifier is the name that actually represents the variable. So whenever you're defining identifiers, make sure that it's not a keyword. So a keyword is just reserved in the Python programming language, and you cannot use them for any of your variable identification, like if, else, while, def, and many others. Around 33 keywords are there in Python. So you cannot use those keywords for uh, as an identifier. So when naming an identifiers, there are certain rules that you need to follow to avoid errors. So you can use A to Z, whether it's capital or small. Keep in mind that Python is a case-sensitive programming language where name was a small letter and name was a capital letter is completely different. When naming a variable, you can always start with underscore if you would like to, uh, but you cannot start with numbers or any special characters. That would be a syntax error. Maybe we can go ahead and type few code. So let's start with our very first code. Let's say print. We just started coding. So the print function or this is used to print something to your uh, to your programming environment. So we just started coding. So while using print statement, if you, the syntax is you have double brackets and then also quotations, and whatever you write inside of it is going to be literally printed, literally printed. So you cannot use print as an identifier, right? So, but a couple of valid identifiers could be, for example, age. If you want a variable that holds age, you can say age equals to 24, or maybe you can say height equals to 170 centimeters, or maybe name is equals to infnova. So these are all valid. So whenever you're storing variables, because this is a word which are known as string in programming language, so you need to put a double quotation. That's the syntax to use strings. Since these are numbers, you never have to use any quotations. So invalid identifiers could be, for example, 2age equals to 24. If you say this is wrong. Or maybe you can, if you start with a dollar sign and say height equals to 170 centimeters. then this is also invalid identifiers. That's going to cause you an error. So even the ID would be suggesting you that something is wrong with this. Okay. So the second thing that we'll be discussing is about statements and comments. So statements are a certain line of code that's able to do a certain execution, whether it's a um, maybe things like assignment that we've done, creating a variable and assigning a value to it, maybe loop function call, which you'd be discussing most of it later on. So any line of comment, any line of code is actually a statement, um, unless it's not a comment. So comments uh, are like a side note, okay? A side note, but which you're not going to be executed later for your programming when the compiler um, uh, turns your code into machine code and then it runs it. So um, for example, if I go ahead and create a name and say this infnova, and then we go ahead and print maybe um, this uh, tutorial is brought to you by, and for you to identify variables and literal printing, you can use commas, okay? So this is going to be literally printed, but this one is actually referring to the variable that holds the value in nova. Okay, inf nova is assigned to name, which is stored here, and then when you call out name, then it's going to print out inf nova. So to identify the variable from the literal printing section, you use commas. So if we go ahead and run this code, it says this tutorial is brought to you by InfNova. Okay. Uh, so probably if you'd like to create a comment for this, there you can use just hashtag. The these line of code prints about the tutorial. So these parts of the code which are hashtagged never execute. It's just a side note for you to remember what your program actually does. So if you're also communicating with other programmers, it's also important so that they can read the side note and understand more. So this is one way of creating a comment. This is just a single line comment. Maybe if you're having a multiple line of comments, then you use triple quotations, and inside of here you can write we are studying Python. Python is a very easy to learn programming language. Okay, so this is also a side note which you can write in multiple lines. But if you're doing a hashtag in front of the comment, then it's only one line. There is also a third way of commenting. This is specific to functions. You haven't learned about functions yet. You don't have to worry about it. But let's say we're defining a function that is named greet, and then um, uh, we can say, yeah, print Nice to meet you today. Nice to meet you today. So this function is just going to print nice to meet you today. Don't worry if you don't understand this at this point. So to give it a doc string or telling what this function actually does, you can leave a comment inside the function between triple quotations. So this function reads. Yep. So if you would like to see what this function actually does, you can say print and then um, greet dot doc. Okay. So you see that this function greets. This is the previous code where we've printed, but this one prints the doc of greet. Okay, so it's a documentation for your function. If it's a bigger function, then it's got a bigger documentation. If we see the documentation of print, you can see that we have a lot of them. Sep does this, in does that, and so forth, which we'll be discussing in a bit. So these are the three types of uh, commenting types in Python. Also, for Python variables, Python variable is a bit different than some other programming language because you don't have to say the type of the variable that you're defining. What I mean by that is, for example, if I say age is equals to 24, that's a numerical value. And maybe I can say height equals to 170.6 centimeters. This is now a decimal number, which we usually call it as a float in programming. Or maybe I can say grade, and grade equals to A. Now this is a string. Uh, Maybe a character, but in Python, they're all the same. If it's a character or a string, they're both the same thing. So I can say name is equals to John. Okay. So this is supposed to be a character in other programming language, but in Python, they're both strings. This is a float or a decimal type of variable, and this is um, an integer type of variable. So when you're defining variables, you never have to specify that this is an integer, this is a float, this is a string, or anything. It's just going to automatically define the size of the variable by the type of the data that you've stored on the right side of the equals to sign. Okay, so it's going to reserve a certain amount of memory for you. So this is defining a variable. When you're defining variable, you can use multiple value assignment. For example, here we've done 4 lines of code, which you can do it in just 1 line. So age, height, grade, name equals to 2470.6 A and John. Okay, so they're all going to respectively match. So the first name of the variable identifier goes to the first value. The second variable identifier goes to the second value, and so forth. So John is going to be for the name, which you can do it in just 1 line of code. Um, so global variables are like the variables that we're defining right now, but when it's not global or it's a local variable, what it means is it's been defined inside of the function, which means it's only visible inside of the functions that they're defined. But if it's global, then it's visible everywhere else. One other important topic to discuss regarding Python is uh, type conversion. So type conversion is very important when you want to convert the type of variable from one type to the other one. For example, let's create a number. Um, let's say that number is 2.5. Maybe this is num1, and another number num2 equals to uh, 3 maybe. So there are two types of conversion. First one is implicit conversion, and the other one is explicit conversion. So let's start off by understanding the implicit conversion. So whenever the two values add up, like in mathematics, 3 plus 2.5 should be 5.5, all right? Uh, so, but this variable is an integer, as you can see, and this one is a decimal or a float type of variable. And there are two different types of data. And for any data to add up, they need to be in the same data types. You cannot add up on, you cannot add oranges and apple. You know, they're two different things. So for them to add up, what Python does implicitly is it change num2 to be a float. Okay, if I say sum equals to 2.5 plus 3, then these, I'm sorry, I'm actually not supposed to add them as numbers, but as variable num1 plus num2. Now you see that this number is a float data type, and this one is uh, a string data type. We can actually check this. Uh, let's probably comment the previous things that we've been doing. So if I go ahead and print type of num1, which is going to tell me the type of num1, print type of num2, which is going to also print me the type of num2. So you can see that num2 is an integer data type, while num1 is actually a float data type. So if we go ahead and check print sum and also print type of sum, you see that the sum is 5.5 and the data type has been turned to be float, which means num has been implicitly converted into an integer, a float data type, so that it reserves all the data. If it's if we change it to be an integer, we're going to lose any data points that are after the decimal point. So when it's an integer, it never rounds it up as we know it in mathematics. It just cuts or truncates any point after the decimal point, and it's going to only keep up the numbers before the decimal point. We can actually do that explicitly. For example, let's say some explicit 2 minutes. Let's just say E. And for num1, I'm going to change it into integer. So int version of num1 plus num2. Okay. So if we go ahead and print type of some E and also print some E. Look, uh, so it's a class of integer, and the value as they add up is going to be 5. It always truncates any decimal points after any data point after the decimal point. Okay, this is explicit conversion. Okay, so now is about time that we start to practice what you've been learning. Practice makes perfect. So go ahead and try these questions by yourself first, and then we'll do it together. Okay? You can find the solutions in the next video. All right? See you then.